I'll get straight into it. My journey starts in Nepal in 1994, and every journey has a start, so I think I'll just start by showing you where I started, which was going to villages as a volunteer, as a teacher, and really being, welcomed with open arms by the people who have so little materially, but who have incredible hearts. The passion, the generosity, the love that they give you. And when I went to each village, researching, looking at different development issues, poverty, they would give you their food, which they had already cooked. You get late there at night. And, oh, Amma, can you let me in? There's no hotels, of course. And they let you into the house and they give you their food, literally. They give you their bed. And one village behind me, Saimrang, where later I met the woman who I married and who became a nurse in one of our big programs there, was an 8-hour tough hike right to the top. I got to the top of the hill, I was overlooking the village below, and I saw this woman, young woman, and she just sped up the hill, like they do, and she had a baby on her back, and she had fear and anxiety, and she just came to me, and she handed over her baby. And it's not the normal thing that you would expect, right? so here I am with this baby in my hand, and I looked at it, and it wasn't good. It was, the eyes were rolling, the baby was floppy, and I was just in shock. And I just handed the baby back, and the woman, very proud, just took the baby and just trotted off. She thought, why isn't he helping me? But I couldn't. Now, that, for me, was something that changed my life. I felt, here I am. I was given all this generosity by these people, a stranger to these communities, yet the one thing that this woman and this community wanted from me was to just simply help her baby, and I couldn't. And that was devastating for me. So, fast forwarding, I decided to do something about it, and I decided that I must not allow other women and babies to have this suffering. So we've learned a couple of things since then. Energy, enthusiasm are very important things, but they really are not enough to really make such a big difference in such a difficult subject matter. So where does one start? You need, of course, knowledge, and you need so many things. And one thing that I learned is that poverty is not about wealth at all. It's about not having a voice. It's not having the opportunity to be able to make a difference, to make impact to the community, etc. So I decided that wherever we are in the world, maybe the surface differences are different, but we all want the same thing, right? We want to be safe. We want to be able to earn a living for our families. We want to have good relationships in our life. And what we also want is simply to be able to give health care to ourselves and most of all to our children. So I could have talked to you actually today about quite a number of things, but I thought today let's start about the important relationships at the very early stage of mother and babies and their young children. So in Nepal, half of all child deaths occur in the neonatal stage, first month of life. Last year, that was 30,000 babies that died, totally unnecessary. And if we also think about it, it's quite logical, right? Because less than 1 woman in 5 will have any skilled delivery, help during her delivery. So, a death of anyone is terrible, but a death of a mother is a catastrophe. This has direct impact on the family, on the community, society, but also has a direct, massive risk on the actual survival of those surviving children. A mother's death has a huge risk of forcing those children to leave their households. And if you think about it, street children, traffic, especially girls, or all the other child labourers that have to work to survive. the nucleus of the family is the mother. And if that nucleus dies, the nucleus of the family dies. So a couple of examples. 3.2 million children in Nepal have to work between the age of 5 upwards just simply to survive. And 20,000 girls get trafficked in and from Nepal every single year. Now clearly, not all of these children have lost their mothers, and that's why we work over different poverty alleviation programs, such as education and protection of children. But I think you will agree with me that this figure is absolutely shocking, of maternal care and childhood life. And no mother should have to live with those risks, and no child should have to endure those hardships. So, there are lots of problems in Nepal, and I needed to understand how I could help. And if we think about it, if these problems were easy, they would have been solved a long time ago. But they're not. And we came across 2 big problem groups. The first one was, how do you develop an organization and make it thrive in such a difficult operating country? I mean, Nepal is in chaos still. It's very unstable politically. In 1995, it started sinking into an 11-year disaster of conflict. And, you know, what do you do? How do you work in that kind of situation? You know, you have to obviously keep a fiercely non-political stance, otherwise you can't operate for those people that need you. You can't really, you have fear. You know, I can tell you that sometimes it was really scary. I had literally a gun put to my head in this period, and it makes you question yourself, it really does. So, but there's also the corruption. I mean, I've lived there for 17 years full time now, and some of the things that I've come across, I mean, just to get a visa, just to get a project agreement to work in the country that you're helping, those government officials are there to help you and to support international development aid agencies. Yet, they come to me and they say, Douglas, we've got a bit of a problem here. See, our government changes every year, so I've actually only got a year to abuse my post. So, so could you kind of help me? You know, I'd really like to help you, but you understand I actually do have to ask you some money. So you've got to be quite creative with button cameras and dictaphones on the table. And that's exactly on one occasion which I did. So we had a meeting in the evening, and I told him, you know, what you need and this and that, and oh, it's difficult. We're an aid agency. We can't actually give you money. And so there, you know, as I walked away, I sent him a tape in an envelope. The next day, I went to his office and said, you know, did you receive my tape? He said, yes. I said, well, did you get the opportunity to listen to it? He said, no. Well, here's a dictaphone. Have a listen to it. So anyway, I'm sure the minister would also love to see this. So I'm going now. And he said, oh, Sada, namaskar, ikshin hai. And he ran after me and he said, I think I can do your work today. So if you come back tomorrow, it will all be done. So, but there's also other problems, knowledge and experience. You know, we didn't have any. We didn't have any technical ability. And I certainly did not have any knowledge of how to run an organization. And you can imagine that, you know, any successful organization, you need that expertise. But what about funding? I'd invested my money. It had come to an end. There's no money in Nepal. And so I had to actually, you know, learn how to fundraise in affluent countries like in Hong Kong. So there are also other problems. The health issue group problem. You can imagine that, you know, we have two kind of, you know, ways of describing the death of mother and child. One is the clinical labels. You know, she's died of infection or bleeding. Or there is the other one in the position where they are in, which is the social and political situation. Why are they in poverty? Or why are they discriminated against because they are of a lower caste, a disadvantaged caste? Or just simply because they're a woman. So you see the figures behind me. I mean, this just gives you a bit of an indication. I mean, in Hong Kong, 556 people see a doctor. In Nepal, at best, that's over 18,000, but in the remote areas, it's probably more like 24,000. Now, to put this into perspective, we came across a simple framework where we can bring these three things together. So the first thing is obviously women in remote areas. Well, I mean, how, first of all, with all their beliefs, local shamans, how do they come to a situation where they can go and seek help? So the first thing is to recognize the problem that you need urgent clinical care. Normally, when of course childbirth is going wrong, so it's too late. And then the next thing is to make the decision, once you've recognized it, to go. But the problem is that people don't have money, that's one thing, but it's also the issue that runs through this whole situation, which is the discrimination against women. The second delay is really how do you actually get to a health post if you live 2-3 days walk away and there's no roads, there's no trains, there's no cars. And the third delay is even if you get there, how do you actually, if you get there, how do you actually get the help if there's maybe no skilled work to help you? So one of the options that we had was to set up women groups in the communities. Now this may sound like a very simple thing, but it's a little bit more complicated than that. Because obviously you have to create an effective mechanism, and the effective mechanism really is to try to get these women talking together, speaking together, being able to release their barriers together, talking about the traditional practices that stop them from seeking help in the first place. And we do that by educating them and by being able to share their issues together, but also if they share together, you can imagine they become a collective force in a community. And they can fight and struggle against those political leaders in those communities. So then there is the second delay, and you can imagine that Nepal has huge elevation differences, flat down in the lowlands, up to the mountains terrains. And you can also imagine that different solutions are needed in different parts of the country. So down south, for instance, what we did is with community groups there, we developed and supported cycle ambulances for the first time. And this makes a difference between whether a woman will give birth and die on the side of a path, or whether she reaches a health facility. So there's also, I told you may recall about, when you reach a health facility, what happens then? Well, the sad reality is that when the women get there, there's no trained staff, there's no basic equipment, but most of all, there's no systems that work. But the good news is that even in the lowest resource areas of Nepal, good care is possible. And we put a lot of emphasis and effect on that. Now, you will also understand that data is important. Anything that you have to prove is important. And so we found out that we don't do everything perfect. In fact, some things don't work at all. But we've been really encouraged that some of our work has been highly successful. And first of all, you cannot overestimate the need of good data. Secondly, the evidence allows you to highlight issues that have been hidden. Now, if you look at the slide behind us, well, the red line was the rest of the district, and we went to the poorest area, which had not had help and which was lower than the district. And then afterwards, 2 years, we were much higher. So these kind of interventions can work, and we can prove that they work. And though we're a small organization, we've come a little further in our lives, and we understand good things about what we've done in our experiences and expertise, and those experiences we can now use to actually influence the policy at national government level. And we also are a very active member of the Association of all international NGOs in Nepal. And that allows us, that mandate allows us to support and monitor government issues, government policies that actually we're now advocating for change for. Now, our journey so far has meant that we really have learnt from our mistakes. And those mistakes have allowed us to actually get credibility because we've changed them, we've improved our services, and that credibility and the capacity that we have allows us to work with the government and large multi-bilateral organizations to really reach out to many communities. And so, if we look at it, when we started 1995 till now, and till what we want to achieve in 2015, I think that's very clear. So just wrapping up, I'd just like to say a couple of things that people have said, well, what does it take when you want to set up an organization? What is meaningful? Well, one thing, you need bags of passion. And you need also to be brave, and you need to make effective risks, because if you don't, you won't get anywhere. And you must also make sure that you have knowledge, tenacity, and belief. But the most important thing of all is that you build up equal relationships with the people that you are supporting and who you work for. Because without that, you'll never get anywhere. You will always have those barriers. And finally, when you're born into this world, you are naked and pure, and you only have your mum to protect you. And when you leave this world, you are naked and you can only take some memories with you. And I can tell you that the fulfillment that I get to see a mother-child relationship thrive and to make sure that the child rights that have been taken away of children get back to those children with the heart and with the love of the smiles on those faces, that gives you the satisfaction, that gives you the motivation to really work hard. And I just want to leave you with one important thing, is to say, if you believe in putting something back into this world, and you believe that you've been put on this world to do so, rather than just take out and protect and get bogged down with protecting your materialism, it's not what life is about. You live too short. So why don't you give back and get that satisfaction? Live once. And that, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to say, if you give much more and you take out less, you will receive the best. Thank you very, very much for listening to this.